started. I think Darwin's going to be here in a second. I'm going to stand and do the pledge real quick. All right. Our first item is the Aquatic Center opening preparation. Did you want to say something about that, Eric? Yeah, have to unmute.
There you go.
There you go.
I say, yeah, I don't do that. That's, no, I just sent Joe had me put together kind of a strategy for the year, and that's what I've done. And it's kind of where I don't know what my next move is. So I know we went out there. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, Darwin, myself, and Brent went out today and just kind of introduced Darwin to the facilities out there, and he got some ideas and different things of what's going on. Brent updated him, but yeah, this is just something I put together at the end of the year, kind of as a guide. But I need to figure out what you guys are thinking of, what you want me to do with this pool and what options and all that stuff.
Okay. So if you wouldn't mind then, Eric, as I kind of go through the list, can you kind of just, since it was a guide, could you kind of say yay or nay to some of the things that you guys have done or you have done, the Parks and Rec, the pool team, meaning advertise for manager and 2 assistant managers for season? I'm guessing that hasn't been done because you're kind of waiting for us?
Correct. The only thing that's really been in the process is I put together a pool committee, and at our meeting Thursday, we'll finalize that to bring to you guys the next meeting. And that's kind of our first step for what we said we were going to do. And then I guess we're just going by your guidance and what you guys want to happen with it. I have talked to a couple people. Emmys as I've talked to them maybe about running a concession stand out there this year. But I would really like to get that concession going if I'm the one that's in charge of it out there.
Okay. So would it be something for discussion's sake for right now, the things that you have down here in front of January, I don't know if everybody has the paperwork in front of you, but like for the advertising for the manager and the 2 assistant managers, would you be, when you say advertise for the manager, would you be talking to the managers that we had last year then, Eric, first, or you just literally, are you thinking, again, I know you're waiting for us, but are you thinking of just advertising it per se?
Yeah, well, it was the strategy last year was to have a manager and 2 assistant managers, which I think should happen this year. I know at the end of the year, kind of when I was overseeing a little bit, they were having problems with, the manager and the assistant manager. If their schedules conflicted, they didn't have enough flexibility to have a manager out there all the times. They were leaving the place in charge of just the lifeguards, and I don't think that's a great idea. If you remember back at the beginning of the season, we did have 2 assistants hired. Max was one of the ones that was hired, and how that all rolled out. So I think, and I've talked to Jennifer. I talked to her last month. She was one of the assistants, Jennifer Saxton. She's interested in coming back. I talked briefly with Alan. It's been a few months ago. I'm not sure if that's the route we want to go. I think we'd have to have a heart-to-heart with him to see. Yeah, nice guy, but I don't know if he was quite ready for that position yet. But I know for sure Jennifer would want to come back. So that's one off the board, but I think we should talk to some other people too.
So since you had it down, one of the ideas listed was to have that in January. That since it is now the 15th of February, that we should probably be moving on that. Would you agree?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Last year, I know the assistant and the manager started in April. So that's probably where they should start again this year, because there's a lot to do. Just getting up and running.
Well, that's one of the things you have down here for April is the manager and the 2 assistant managers begin their employment in April.
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, and that gets some kind of things under wraps. They can start lining up the lifeguard training. They can be helping the process. The facilities out there is just basically a shell yet, and we got it open last year. That was the goal, and that's what happened. Now we got to get that place organized a little bit. So these guys are, not, run around with their heads cut off out there. To give a little bit of organization. Just as simple things as staying organized, filing, having the proper paperwork out there when they need it. So I think, yeah, go ahead, go on.
Sorry. Has your pool committee started? So you formed the pool committee, and how many people are on your committee as we speak now?
Well, we're finalizing that. Our last meeting in January, we talked about, we had 3 of our Parks and Rec committee members volunteer to be on the committee.
Right.
And I figured we get 2 or 3 more at the most. And I know 2 names they've mentioned already, and I know another one that popped up and got a hold of me the other day. So we're going to try to have all those people at the meeting on Thursday, Zoom meeting, and present them to you guys the last meeting of the month here for their approval, and then figure out what exactly we're going to do with them.
Okay, because again, going back to the paperwork, it says review the rules and procedures that we've updated and sent to the village administrator in October. My assumption is once you have your team together, you're going to share that group with us. Is that something that we have to, Darwin, go ahead and give our blessing to, our permission to, and say, yes, this is fine for the committee, or is this something that Eric just takes upon himself as the Parks and Rec director?
I would like the council to be able to review and give final approval to what we're doing with the aquatic center. I know you had somewhat of a rocky start this past year. I want to make sure at least this first, we anticipate a full year of services at the pool, that everybody is on board and that we all feel comfortable with what's happening.
Okay.
If I could, if it's okay, Your Honor, for me to jump in just for a moment, just to put everything into perspective, really the village's budget is what is going to drive most of what we do with the aquatic center this year. That is really going to drive a lot of decisions. In looking over the budget, it appears that the pool budget is about $105,000 operating expenses. And Joe had anticipated that we would generate about $25,000 in pool receipts. So just to put that into perspective for the council and for staff who are on this meeting. So we have to, absent any additional pool receipts, whether generated through concessions or some other means, or a supplemental appropriation from the village council to operate the pool facility, we really are operating on a budget of $105,000 for this upcoming year.
Which is pretty lean, if I remember right.
It is. 3 years ago, the budget was $160,000.
Okay.
And that was at the old pool.
I believe so, yes.
Yeah, it was.
Okay.
The budget for the old pool was 160,000.
Yes, 2017, 2018 budget, I believe, was 160,000.
Was the pool open then, guys? I don't even remember.
No, I think the pool closed it, didn't it close in 2015?
Yeah, so I don't know what that was for.
Do we have an amount, Darwin, of what the cost was for our lifeguards and our personnel for last year? I know we have, when you say operating, is that just when you say operating, is that the water, the chemicals, or is that also part, I'm assuming, of our people portion of it? But do we have a direct amount of just what the people portion employees concerned were?
We had, let's see. For pool wages, just wages, we have budgeted 50, just over $53,000.
Okay.
And that's coming out of that 105,000.
Yes,
And that's for this year, the 21 season.
yes.
Gotcha. Okay.
Well,
And I'm
Glenn,
sorry, did you say, Darwin, did we use that 53,000 last year? Is that,
we used just under $7,000 for DPW wages and about $17,000 for part-time wages.
okay, thank you.
So, yeah, that was kind of the original reason that I brought this up, because obviously, Eric, it's going to have to be a pay to play for anything, any sort of over the top, whether it's aerobics classes or swim classes or whatever. We need to figure out how we're going to pay for these and how we're going to fund them if we have them at all. Obviously the pool operations are going to be higher than what we expected if we're going to start Memorial Day like we traditionally do and run a full season. Obviously the money doesn't work. We're going to have to cut somewhere. And on top of that, I want to make sure that we get all the final punch list items taken care of, from the retainer. So we're going to have to get a roof contractor out there. We're going to have to get these other minor details taken care of before we can open the season. So it's, the challenge is going to be, how do we fund this thing?
And I'm glad that you mentioned that, Mike, because we have, there are several critical areas that I've identified. First is getting a handle on the budget, knowing exactly how much we have to work with. The second is, as you mentioned, the punch list items. Now, in reviewing the punch list items, I did not see anything that couldn't either be done before the pool opened or after it closed for the season. I didn't see anything that was critical to the actual operation of the pool facility. So there is some flexibility in getting those items done as far as timing is concerned, but they do need to be done. We have preparations that we have to do. One set of preparations for the bathhouse, and then a second set of preparations for what I call the pump house. The bathhouse preparations in talking with our DPW supervisor, can be handled by the Department of Public Works with no problem. The pump house preparations, we believe, both myself and our DPW supervisor, that work would best be handled with professional services from a contractor. And we did receive a price quote from B&B Pools. They handled the work last year. We would recommend that we engage them again this year. And then as over the course of this year and maybe next year, as Public Works employees are able to observe exactly what B&B Pools is doing, or another contractor, if the council wants us to go out for bid for these services, DPW should be able to gain a better understanding of how that work is being done. But right now, I think our DPW supervisor does not feel comfortable enough that they know everything that needs to be done to be able to handle the pump house and the pool preparations, pool and splash pad preparations. So, and then of course, staffing is something we need to get working on relatively quickly, so that we can line up our staffing for the upcoming year. Those are the more critical issues. Some of the other ones, like programming at the facility, I'm hoping that the committee that Eric has been talking about will be very helpful in that regard, and hopefully can generate some additional revenue for the village to help offset the costs. But we definitely need to start on the critical items first. And I was so happy to see that Eric had worked on a comprehensive list that really gives us a good idea of what we need to do and the time frame that we have to do the things in. We are a little bit behind schedule, but at this point, I don't see anything that gives me concern. I think we can fairly quickly catch up on the things for January and February.
Darwin, do we know what B&B Pools is going to charge us to open the pool?
I do, but I'm not going to share those numbers with council until the council tells me that you do not want us to go out for bid, because it would not be fair to B&B Pools to release their numbers.
Understand. Thank you.
Did B&B, they opened it up last year, didn't they?
B&B did the winterization.
Right.
I don't, Brent, did they also handle the opening?
Yeah, B&B opened it and closed it. They have an opening crew and a closing crew.
And they did submit proposals to us for both the spring opening and the winterization in the fall.
What does council think about B&B again, or do you want it to go out to bid?
Brent, what were your thoughts with the work that B&B did? I mean, since they did the pool and you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I recommend B&B to do both of them. All the products you're going to buy is going to come from B&B. They're the biggest. Even for your chlorine tablets, that's where you're going to end up probably buying all your stuff as well. They are the ones that can set up all the machinery, all the chlorinators and everything inside there. They'll have it up and running for us. When they walk away, it'll pass from the health department.
Thank you.
And they're also familiar with the pool too, so.
Yeah, they are the ones that built the pool.
Mhm.
So is there a consensus? If not, then we'll just have Darwin have B&B, get a hold of B&B, and we'll just go with them. If no one else has anything else to offer up.
Is that something that we can decide tonight?
I would not recommend that you decide that tonight. It does require council approval because it is an amount that is in excess of the purchasing authorization of the village administrator. So if the council is comfortable with moving ahead with B&B, I will have it placed on your agenda for Monday's meeting.
I'm comfortable with it, Darwin.
Yeah,
am too.
I would agree.
Darwin, do you have last year's budget in front of you or no?
Yes,
Can you tell us what the pool actual operations cost, total cost
sure.
was?
For last year, it's showing that the actual financial activity for the pool was $68,522.
And that was from the end of July till the end of August. Because we opened late last year.
Yeah, I know it was only for a portion of the season.
Till September 6th was the last day.
Oh, that's right. Yep.
So you're talking about doubling that figure for a full season.
Mm-hmm.
So we're what, $40,000 short at this point?
Probably about 35,000. Yes.
And I'm not even sure the heaters were on. Brent, I know you'd know better, but I don't even know if we ran the heaters all year last year.
No, Mike, no heaters were ran. And that pool, like I said, if you talk to B&B, the price wise on a pool that size and being open like that depends on the weather, sun, all that, wind, everything decides for the chemical use on that pool.
So again, that comes back to my concern, you know, what kind of programming do we have? Obviously, swim lessons, you know, the aerobics, the entire, you know, lane usage, lap usage, that sort of thing. All that depends on a pay-to-play thing this year. Again, we're not going to be able to do the, you know, the free for the town regular swim opening, and then everything else above that's going to have to self-support it if it's going to happen. Is that your take on it, Eric?
Yeah, definitely. But we got to figure out what my role is with this too, because if we want to do a little history with the Park and Rec director, I've been doing a little bit of research. Obviously, last year was a funked up year, so I'm going there. But 2019, for example, I worked over 700 hours that year, and which I have no problem doing. I enjoy what I do, and I would love to be involved with this pool, but we're paying our lifeguard or our manager and assistant manager right now. If they work a 40-hour week starting in April, they're making over $8,000. I know they didn't do that last year for obvious reasons. We opened late, different things. They didn't work 40 hours every week. So we got to figure out what my role financially is in this too, because I have a full-time job, which I'm planning on keeping. As you know, some of you, I rolled out a plan 2 years ago on how to program and run the pool. Nothing was done at that time, which is fine. I get it. There's not money, but we need to figure out what exactly my role is in this, because that's, this list here is a lot of work, and I'm more than happy to do it. But like I said, I have a full-time job. I can make this work, but we need to figure out how I can make that work without sound like I'm greedy.
Are you thinking something like a stipend per month kind of a thing, Eric? Or are you thinking something like adding on just simply to the duties as well as to the overall pay for the Parks and Rec director? Do you have a thought to that?
Well, if I was running the pool, this is not a April to September job. This is a full year running the pool. It can't start in January or whatever. It has to be planning all year round to make it work. I think we can get there. I know, like I said, last year was an odd year. We can get there. We're not going to be where we want to be yet this year. It takes time. I think we put a 5-year plan in place for the pool and get there. Like I said, I make $7,000 a year now, which, I don't have a problem with. I've never gotten a raise other than the 3%, which is fine. Our programming is very detailed, runs pretty smooth. We are in the black every year. I know we're not going to be in the black with the pool. I get that. But we got to figure out, I'd like to make a little more than what the lifeguards are making for putting together programming and everything needs to be done with the pool. So and if that doesn't work, I get it. But that's kind of where I'm at. And I'd love to be part of it. But
So,
it won't interfere with my full-time job.
If I hear you correctly, so you were saying that your current pay is 7,000 something, correct?
About 7,000, yeah.
And that the manager / assistants would be making over 8,000. So you would be looking to having something like a $15,000 salary for your, and just so that we understand, what I think you're saying here is you're saying that in order for the Parks and Rec director to work with the pool year long, it would be something like an increase to $15,000.
Well, I was thinking more of 10,000 on top of what I was making. And I don't think that's out of range. That puts me into about right now I'm making under about $11 an hour, which I have no problem with. To detail all this out and to make it work, like I said, I work a full-time job. This is not going to interfere with my full-time work. That's what I was thinking. And I don't know if that's in the budget or not. So.
Well, no, if we don't discuss it, we'll never know. So it needs to be discussed. So that's.
Yep. And I got a lot of ideas. So, and I'm not trying to say, put a deadline or something like that. I just think it's fair.
What I would recommend to the council is that perhaps Eric and I should have further discussions on this, come up with a plan that we can recommend back to the village council so that you have everything laid out for you and have a clear understanding of where we're going from here with any role that Eric has with the pool facility, as well as the rest of our planned operations for the pool. Eric and I had already started these discussions, and I definitely look forward to continuing those discussions with them.
Yeah, sounds fair with me.
How quickly can we see a comprehensive plan for a return on investment for something like this? How far away from you are you from making a full proposal, Eric?
I just did, I thought. No. Darwin,
well, I don't see hours invested. I what I see is an overview, which is great.
Right.
I'd like to see a little bit more detail and a little bit more of the income stream that you're looking to generate, not only from you, but also from the programming as well. We talked about being short about $20,000. If we can get some programming that makes money, Not every avenue is going to make money. The open swim isn't always going to make money. It's a public service. I get that some of it's going to lose, but rentals, late nights, weekends, parties. If you could come up with some revenue streams to help us offset that, it's going to make I think our decision much easier.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
if you have something like that in mind, I'd like to see something like that. I'm sure the rest of council would as well. If we can eat up some of that budget shortfall through purchasing you or purchasing your programming, I think that would make a lot of sense.
Yeah, and I think like Darwin was saying, we can sit down and put something together. I'll pull out my plan from 2 years ago which had all that on there, showing how everything would pay for itself. But yeah, I'll sit down with Darwin. We can definitely do that, James.
Okay, so the quicker the better, because we're already midway through February, right? And we're looking to open up Memorial Day. So if
We're
we can
3
get this
months from opening.
plan in action.
Yep. All right, then, Eric, you and Darwin can work that out and get it to council.
Yep.
Next action item is we're going into the village administrator. Do you want to, Darwin, do you want to pick that up?
Sure. Thank you, Your Honor. Let me pull up my background brief here. So first of all, I don't know if all of the council members have seen my email from today. We did receive 5 proposals from executive search firms for the to handle the village administrator search process. I'm pleased that we received that many proposals. So those proposals have been forwarded on to the committee members. The committee members will be meeting Thursday afternoon to review those proposals, discuss them, and hopefully be prepared to formulate a recommendation to the council for next Monday on selection of a firm. As far as the administrator position itself, as council and I have discussed previously, this is an excellent opportunity for the council to review the position to determine whether you are satisfied with the village administrator position as it is currently, or if you feel that there are changes that should be made to the authority, duties, responsibilities of the position at this time. When we discussed this last week, the council expressed an interest in having this meeting tonight to talk about it in further detail. You also asked for my insights as you continue your process in discussing this. And there are really 3 things that you need to look at. You need to look at the charter, which is Act 3 of 1895, serves as the village's charter. The state statute does contain a section that deals with the council's authority to create the position of village manager. It does reference the village, the title of village manager. And the charter states that the council can do one of 2 things. The council can establish a position and then grant to that position any administrative responsibilities, duties, authority that are not already the responsibility of another official of the village. Or if you adopt an ordinance creating the position, you can outline in the ordinance that the village manager, village administrator will be responsible for additional administrative duties that belong to other officials, certain other officials of the village. For example, any administrative duties that the council may have that they wish to assign to the village manager. The village president under state statute has certain administrative duties. The clerk, the treasurer, And so it does allow the council the flexibility to assign some or all of those administrative duties to the village. And I say village manager because that's what state statute refers to it as. So based on that framework, and again, I strongly recommend that the council also consult with the village attorney. I don't give any legal advice. I'm just telling you what my understanding is, a non-legal understanding. So with that framework, then the council adopted an ordinance creating the position of a village administrator. And that ordinance, for lack of a better term, is vague in many respects as to what the position should entail, what the authority, duties, and responsibilities of the position should be. And the reason I say that is because later, about 7 years after adopting the ordinance, the village council approved a job description for the position that was much broader than what the ordinance allowed for. And so these three things need to be reconciled: the state statute, the village ordinance, and the job description. And it all will flow from what the desires are of the council, what your vision is for the village manager or village administrator position going forward. So I welcome your discussions, and if you have questions for me, I will do my best to answer those questions.
I think you hit the nail on the head with a lot of these recommendations, Darwin, and I appreciate the time, obviously, that you put into the report. I would agree with most all changes that you're recommending, except for section 5, which would be the hiring, and I guess quote firing of administration. I still feel that it's council's actions to hire, and I guess fire or be the ones who interview the candidates and hire those for the roles of supervisors or department heads, as well as the village administrator. The day-to-day operations, day-to-day staff, that's something that we did discuss previously a little bit with Joe, and maybe tweaking that. And I think, again, I see where you're coming from and giving yourself the oversight and the capability to run the village, because that's essentially what you do. You do the day-to-day operations, the day-to-day management. But I still think council should hire, or should be the ones that hire department heads, as well as the village manager himself or herself.
I would concur with what you've said, Mike, as well. Obviously spend some time on this, Darwin. Thank you for it, because this is exactly what I was looking for, to have your insight. And this is the perfect time, as you've alluded to go ahead and make these corrections, these changes. If we're going to do this, this is the time to do that. On the part of the authority to recommend employee hiring and discharge, Mike, I do agree with you as well. That I do think that, again, with the department heads as well as the personnel, that it would be more in conjunction, a discussion with the administrator / manager with council versus a manager. I'm a little leery of that manager having that total opportunity, for lack of better words.
Just for clarification, though, because I want to make sure we all have an understanding of what the concerns of the council are, okay, and trying to address those as we move forward. Is the concern that the council feels that you should have, that there should be a check and balance on the hiring process, that the council should have confirmation authority? Is that, Mike, what your looking for is that council have the ultimate approval of hiring. I just want to make sure that I understand.
That would be something for discussion. Obviously, it may not be, the regular staff. That could be something that would fall under the administrator. But any sort of department head, any sort of leadership, I think should at least be, quote, rubber stamped or selected by council, and council can choose however they want to move forward on that one. Obviously, the way that we did move forward with the clerk and the treasurer, that's something that would fall again underneath the village administrator, the oversight, the reporting to. That's something that, again, right, we by appointing those positions, that was what the intent was to move to, so that we had some checks and balances with the reporting, the day-to-day that goes through the administrator. So you have that top-down approach. You got council, then you've got the administrator, and pretty much everything, department heads, and then staff falls underneath that.
Because I just wanted to make sure that it was clear to the council that my recommendation was that for the administrative officers, the department heads of the village, the village manager or village administrator would recommend the appointment, and the council would approve those. So it wasn't, and I don't know if you took it that way or if there was a misunderstanding, but my recommendation was that the department heads be, that the council confirm those appointments.
Okay.
Go ahead, Gwen.
No, Jerry, go ahead.
Also under section 5, it says the administrator shall have the authority to remove administrative officers without the approval of council.
Right.
I don't know if that sits very well with me. I mean, ultimately, we're responsible to the public, and I don't know how anybody else feels about it, but I think when you're talking management staff, that's something I think we as council, at least from my point of view, would probably want to be involved in at some point.
That's the vetting process in the hiring. We need to hire an administrator that we have belief in and allow him the authority to hire and fire who he or who they see fit. That we're borderline micromanaging there, Jerry. I don't know. Maybe we want to set up some sort of judiciary process for dismissal, but if there's cause for dismissal, we have to kind of back the position of the administrator if that's who we vet and that's who we hire on the way in. That's why the hiring process is so important.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think that's something
it's kind of a catch-22 there. That's a tough one.
Mm-hmm. I hear where you're coming from, James, and but I can also see where Jerry's coming from. I guess the way that I look at it is that Darwin, I know you haven't been with our village very long, and you're as an interim position, certainly. If you gave the recommendation to me that someone would need to be let go, I would feel very comfortable with you making that recommendation. Honest answer. I would not have felt comfortable before with past administrators, with them having that authority. So James, you're right with that vetting process is so critical, but how do you know? Because you just don't know until you get into that moment. And then what if things don't turn out like you thought that they might?
Okay, so using that logic, then we should just give the administrator carte blanche to hire all administrative personnel. Because if we're giving him power to fire, we should also give him absolute power to hire. Correct?
Well, that's how I read the section 5. And that's why part of me has a bit of a problem with it. But at the same token, I'm with James. I can understand where you want to put that faith into your administrator / manager. where that is his job, so that there isn't, the politics are taken out of it, if you will.
All right.
Well, so
Darwin-
Jerry, if we do extend that carte blanche, as you say, we still have to hold the administrator responsible. So
Correct.
ultimately, we would look to hire or fire them,
Correct. I get that.
right? So
Yeah.
if all of a sudden there's a lot of turnover in the office, or we're seeing things that we don't agree with, then we would have to step in as council, notify them of that, and then look to no longer retain their services. So I think that check and balance still exists, but again, it's a fine line.
Good point. Hey, Darwin, I know you've worked at some other places. Is this how other municipalities do it?
Well, there are a variety of ways that they do it. There are communities that do it just the way that you do it. I would say that the majority of manager council governments, even though there may be confirmation authority on the part of the council, in my experience, there's been more flexibility in being able to make personnel decisions and make changes as necessary on the part of the manager. And the reason for that is that in a council manager form of government, the manager or administrator is responsible to the council for executing council's policy. The employees of the village work for the village administrator or the village manager. And the village manager has to be able to build a team and properly supervise and counsel his or her team to get the work done, because ultimately it's the manager's responsibility to make sure the work gets done in accordance with council's direction. So the council has to provide that enough flexibility for the manager to be able to manage his team or her team. My experience has been in manager council forms of government, there's more discretion on the part of the manager than what you currently have here. But there are some communities where the councils have decided that they want more oversight over the personnel functions. That can be good, that can be bad. As you know, personnel decisions in and of themselves can be a huge political issue. And when you're faced with the issue of having to hear complaints or hear appeals on personnel decisions, that puts the council in uncomfortable situations many times as well. So it is, either way, it is a difficult situation for the council to be in. But if you're making good hiring decisions when you're hiring your manager, going through a diligent process like you are right now, I have to agree with James. You have to have the confidence in your manager that he or she has been trained to manage the human resources, to make proper decisions. I would argue even further that you should require any manager you hire to be at least a member of the Michigan Municipal Executives, because as a member of the State Association, we are bound by the National Code of Ethics. And part of the Code of Ethics is we have to make impartial personnel decisions based on merit and fitness. So there are checks and balances in place. But I also agree with James that your control over administration is your control over the manager. If you are not happy with the way that the manager is managing the organization, you get rid of the manager. But my own feeling is, council, you would be best served to stay as much as possible out of the personnel issues. take that advice and that position for whatever you may take it for.
I appreciate the insight. Thank you.
I do too. I appreciate the insight. As I read through it, my thoughts were that I'm going to use Nora as a department head. Say she had a problem with one of her employees under her, then she could take that information to the manager and they could decide together. I mean, she's done the legwork, but then she has somebody over her helping her to make that decision, that saying that she's right. Then department heads would be looked over by the manager. And if there was a problem there, then the manager should go to council as somebody to confirm his thoughts and assessment. Not that council should have a lot to do with looking into it, but just take the reports and say, this is substantial, so yes, we agree, let the person go, or whatever the circumstances are.
The only insight that I can provide to you on this in that regard is that what you do when you create a structure like that, you put the manager in a position where now the manager has to weigh how much the manager wants to be responsive to the council and how much the manager wants to be responsive to the people below him or her, so as not to upset the apple cart. And sometimes it makes it difficult to manage an organization, especially if you have a problem employee. I can tell you I have not run into any here, which is an unusual situation, but we have great employees here. But it makes it more difficult for the manager sometimes to make the tough decisions that have to be made. And those decisions need to be made in a non-political way. There should not be political considerations when the manager's got to make a decision. When, first of all, a manager is trained. First, you try to develop your employees. If they've got shortcomings, you do what you can to try to develop them through training, through counseling, what have you. But if that just is not working, and the public is not being served well, the managers sometimes has to make tough decisions as to when an employee just is not working out in an organization. But if the manager feels like those personnel decisions are going to be aired in public and go through a hearing process or what have you, it makes it difficult for everybody to be able to make those decisions. Again, I understand where you're coming from as far as you've got to be able to trust your manager that he or she is making those proper decisions. I completely understand that. And I completely understand the angst of, being able to take that leap of faith. But you do have control over the manager, complete control over the manager. Whether a manager stays, whether a manager goes, only subject to whatever you have negotiated with that manager in their employment agreement. So the council does have control over administration. You do have influence in the decisions that are made, just not necessarily in the way that it is currently structured.
Darwin, explain the part where you talk about where you're saying consider amending the ordinance, then that that require that neither the council nor any of its members shall in any manner dictate the appointment or removal of village administrative officers or employees. So council and essentially have no say over the hiring or firing of quote any employees is the way that you're writing that in there. That he doesn't sit well.
No, what that means is that the manager should be free to advertise the positions, to go through the recruitment process, interview candidates for the positions. And then as far as department heads are concerned, then make a recommendation to the council on an appointment for a department head position. What should ideally not be happening is that council members are providing undue influence during the recruitment process. And that is putting pressure on the manager, who is a non-political professional administrator, to hire one person over another. The appointment process should be fair and objective for anyone who applies for the positions. That's what that is intended to do. But as far as department heads, the council would have say, if you don't like the candidate that the manager is presenting to you for confirmation, the council votes it down. And then the manager has to go back through the process and either select one of the other candidates that has already gone through the process or go through an entirely new process.
So would the clerk and treasurer be included with the department heads? And
Yes.
then, and maybe the rest of the office staff?
Yes, all of your administrative officers, the clerk, the treasurer. I would say that you need to somehow establish by ordinance who the administrative officers of the village are, because it isn't quite clear. But I would include the DPW supervisor, the wastewater treatment plant supervisor, the water plant supervisor, the police chief, as administrative officers of the village. And those would require that the manager come to council for approval of the appointments. Other employees, police officers, office staff, janitorial staff, those would all be handled by the manager.
I agree. The management staff would be all of the department heads, the wastewater, the water, the DPW, and the PD. That would be administrative, as well as the clerk and the treasurer. That's the way that it sort of is now, whether it's written down or not. That's the way that I believe this council is following it and you're following it. Yep. I still think that it's critical that council is somewhat involved in the recruitment, at least in the interview process, in order to work with the village administrator, whether it's subcommittee or whatever, to make a full recommendation to council for those hiring and firing processes. That's my input on it. I agree. The day-to-day staff, the police officers, the DPW employees, and you know, those sort of people, I would have no problem being overseen by the manager and with the department head's input on the hiring and firing process. We don't need to micromanage that part, but administrative people, our leadership team, I think council has the right to be involved in the hiring and firing process for them.
So that's basically how we have it currently. And I thank you, Darwin, for all the work that you did. And I think Section 5 is, as we are having this discussion, a little, we're not sure where we want to go on that part.
Well, technically we do kind of have our hands in it, because whether, you know, just like hiring a regular day-to-day DPW officer or employee or a police officer, we technically have been formally approving them as a council. So, you know, did we want to take that out of the mix? that would be the question for the board.
I personally don't have a hang up either way. It was more a discussion, see what the council felt. The staff here is very solid. It's it doesn't turn over. So look at the longevity, how many years in service our leadership people have, or people in the leadership roles. So this is, I don't know, it's not a make it or break it issue. I think the other recommendations have a lot of value, and I definitely would institute all, if not most of them. So either way,
I would like to see it in black and white that the village treasurer and clerk do report to the village administrator in the future, if that's not spelled out clearly, along with every other department head and employee underneath that.
I thought that was one of the recommendations specifically that he has. I don't know where it is in there, but it does state with the clerk and the treasurer, since they are now in the positions.
It may just not have been spelled out real clearly when we changed that ordinance to appoint them, how they report back to the manager itself or council.
This is definitely an opportunity for the council to clean some of these items up, document them either in the ordinance or what have you, to make it clear how it's to be handled. So this is a great opportunity for you. I did want to point out one other thing, because I'm sure the council has seen the email that came through from the library board. And so I wanted to clarify that while we have the opportunity, because I think there has been some confusion about the status of the library. Maybe not, but I thought this is a great opportunity to talk about that. The library is a separate authority under state law. And I know that in some respects, there's been some talk that it's another department of the village. It really is not. It is its own separate authority under state statute. It has its own elected board. And state statute is clear that the personnel of the library are under the auspices of the library director and the library board. The library board has complete control over its finances, the tax levy that goes to the library. So I think there was a little bit of confusion when some members read what my recommendations for the council were, and I just want to make sure that hopefully that was cleared up, that I view the library as being a semi-autonomous body. It's for financial purposes, for policy-making purposes, for personnel management purposes. I don't think there's any ambiguity in state law in that regard. Of course, as always, I always say, consult with the village attorney. The library board should consult with its legal counsel. But the way I understand the state statute, they are, for all intents and purposes, an autonomous entity.
Yeah, I saw that email, and I'm really glad that you did clear that up. It seemed like there was some, definitely some, they wanted to know how that worked, actually. So you were talking about the ordinance and job description. They don't match up, and that's where we want to, is that what you're talking about as far as cleaning it up?
Yes, I think once the council has had an opportunity to make any changes that you may want to make to the ordinance, then we can prepare a new or revised job description that more closely aligns with what you have outlined as the authority, duties, and responsibilities of the village administrator position in the ordinance. It's very important that the ordinance provides the guiding authority for the position, and then the job description should flow directly from the ordinance. And anything that's not authorized in the ordinance should not be included in the job description.
Well, that would bring up another question I'd have, subsection 2, speaking of contract. I don't know how many other municipalities do, I guess, operate without a contract, Darwin. I would rather see that position be at will. And I know that some, candidates may have issues with that, but that again protects us from being locked down into somebody that we don't want or aren't happy with. As well as, the potential of paying them out or fighting, with a legal dispute on how to terminate this person. We did it with the previous village administrator, well, the 2 previous village administrators ago for years without a contract, and we did it successfully. I think that's something that we could pull off.
Where is that? Because I when you say subsection 2, can you help me out on that?
He's got the consider amending section 2, talking about a period of up to 6 years rather than, I think, the 2 years described.
That's what I thought you were referring to. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, your current ordinance does reference and permitting the council to enter into an employment contract. The village charter, state statute, also permits the council to enter into an employment contract. Right now, your ordinance states an employment contract up to 2 years. What I am recommending is that, for one thing, the ordinance doesn't require that the council enter into an employment contract. It permits it. But right now it limits it to 2 years. There may be an instance where the council wants to enter into a contract that is more than 2 years. State law allows you to enter into a contract for up to 6 years. So I'm just recommending that you include the language in the ordinance that allows that discretion as permitted under state statute.
Do you think that would attract more potential manager or potential managers to the village if we extended that?
I definitely think it could not hurt to have that option available. I think it would definitely be a disincentive if the council's policy was that you would not even consider entering into an employment agreement. One of the things you need to keep in mind is that when a village manager or village administrator accepts a position in a community, they are also making a commitment. Especially if the council wants to encourage the manager to move into the community, you can't require it under state law. But if you want to encourage it, they are uprooting their families to move here. And many times they're leaving other employment to come to work for you. And so part of the protection for them is that they have an employment agreement that says that you will treat them fairly. Managers understand that they are at-will employees and they work at the will and at the pleasure of the village council. But there has to be some protection for the manager, that if the council decides that for whatever reason, other than just cause, you want to terminate the manager, that there has to be some compensation to allow the manager to move on to another position, another community. So what I would say to you, my recommendation is that you include the language permitting the council to enter into an employment agreement for up to 6 years. That does not mean you have to. That is all subject to negotiation when you make your selection of a finalist. That's when you start negotiating that. And you can start out by saying, we'd prefer not to have an employment agreement, and see where it goes from there. But at least if you have it in the ordinance, it gives you that flexibility.
Let me ask you, can I ask you a quick question, Darwin?
Sure.
From what you've seen, is the village responsible for establishing that contract, or does the new candidate, manager candidate, responsible for writing their own contract?
My experience has been that the city or village attorney usually drafts the employment agreement, and then presents a draft to the finalist for their review. And then the finalists will engage in negotiation either with the village attorney or with a committee of the council, or with the entire council, on the final terms and conditions of the employment agreement. But my experience has been that it's, in every situation I've been in, it has been the municipal attorney who has drafted the original agreement.
Thank you.
Darwin, when you stated here for this, the disincentive to some potential candidates, as Jerry had talked about as well, the whole change of the vocab going from the administrator versus the manager, the section 5 that we were just talking about with the hiring slash what we got there, hiring slash fire, the discharge. Okay, I guess what I'd like to know is, I'd like Blissfield to be a big incentive to come to, and what recommendations that we can have for the incentives. I don't know if I'm making myself clear, meaning if it's a disincentive for the 2-year, then I think we need to visit that 6-year. If it's a disincentive to get a quality manager slash administrator to have a that opportunity to hire slash fire slash interview. I mean, I guess I want to know, what is the best way to get the best candidate? How do we get somebody of your caliber into Blissfield? No, I'm being very serious. I mean it in a very serious way, because you have, from my opinion, and I know from other people as well, that things seem to be going in we haven't lost a step, as was a concern for the transition. Things are moving along. You're being professional. You definitely are moving us, and you're doing what we're asking you to do. How do we get the best for Blissfield?
I think
so that so there is that incentive to be here.
right. I think there are several things, and I think you pointed out some of them. I think first of all, any of the candidates applying for the position are going to look at the legal structure that you have setting up the position. They want to know that there's stability in the position. So the ordinance is extremely important. They are going to read that ordinance. They're going to see what authority the village manager or administrator has, what ability they have to be able to properly manage the organization, because they know that they are ultimately responsible for getting things done. And if they can't build a team that will get things done, then they will pay the price for that more than anybody else. So they're going to look at the legal structure. They're going to look at whether or not the structure is set up for them to succeed or to set up for them to fail. The ordinance is very important. I think keeping the ordinance structured so that it provides the maximum flexibility under the law for the council to be able to negotiate with your permanent employee is very important. The limit of 2 years on a contract is going to be a disincentive for some.
Right.
So I think if you put in there that council can enter into a contract up to the 6-year limit that's established by state law, it can only help.
Okay.
But also, I think the other single most important thing is salary and benefits. And that, to a certain extent, that decision is made for you based on your budget. The council can only afford to provide and to offer what financially you can afford to provide and offer. But looking at it closely to make a determination on what you can afford, advertising a salary range based on qualifications and experience that is attractive will get you someone who is well qualified for the position. I think as part of this process, and the executive search firm will step you through, they will do a review of the competitive salaries and benefit packages that are being offered for similar communities across the state of Michigan. So they will be able to provide you with that information. But for the council to be open to looking at that and making sure that you are providing a competitive salary and benefit package. And some of that may not even be financial incentives. Leave time. One of the things that's more important to me even than the salary, because I've been a manager for 30 years, is the leave time that's available to me. So those things, as long as the job is getting done, the council shouldn't be concerned about granting additional leave time, whether it's administrative leave or vacation time, to a well-seasoned manager. So be generous in that regard, especially if it's not really costing you anything in dollar terms, because your concern should be that the job is getting done. So those types of things. There are creative ways that you can make a position attractive without adding to the bottom line financially. And as we move along in this process, I'll be able to provide you with some more insight if the council would like me to.
Okay. Thanks.
Where do we
Yeah.
where do we start with? Okay, where do we start with rewriting the ordinance? Do we take what you gave us and write our thoughts on there, or do you start by redoing it?
I think if the council would like to take the information that has been presented to you, and if you want to share your own insights, I can work with the village attorney to prepare a new ordinance that we can present back to the council for your further consideration and discussion. I'm hearing some things that the council wants some control, at least over appointment of department heads. It appears that that's the consensus of the council, at least on that point. But that you feel a little more comfortable in some of the other areas that I have made some suggestions in. So at least it's a starting point for me to be able to work with the village attorney and draft something for you to review it, something visual that you can look at and review.
It would seem that the sooner would be the better regarding this, because of the mission that Jerry, Mike, and I will be looking to see which firm we're going to be going with. And as you stated, the people looking for the job are going to be looking at our ordinance, as you stated.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Is this something that Jeff feels that he can pull off in the next week or so? Do we know that?
I don't know if Jeff is on here. I don't see him.
I didn't see him either. I didn't know if perhaps you'd had some dialogue with him.
I have not talked to Jeff on the village administrator ordinance. However, I think that based on the discussion tonight and based on my being able to gather some ordinances or charter provisions from some other communities, I don't think it will take us that long to be able to draft something that council can look at in a fairly short period of time.
I would say move forward on that. Because like Gwen said, we're meeting on Thursday, so it's not gonna leave us much time to get stuff done.
So I would meet with Jeff Darwin and get that going.
I'm also guessing that, Darwin, we would have to have the job description tweaked so that it follows the ordinance as well. And that would be something that needs to be done fairly quickly
Yes, you do have a little bit of time because the executive search firm is going to be doing some background work for you before we actually get into the advertising of the position.
Okay.
So you do have a little bit of time to work on these items, but yes, you're absolutely right. Once the council has a clear idea of how what direction the ordinance is going, we can then start preparing any changes to the job description as well.
Well, I would like that I would like no one to hear that it can take a little while. I would like it to be considered that there is no time to waste. Sometimes I think when we hear we've got time, that things don't get done as quickly as we would need to have done.
Yeah, I definitely hear you on that.
Is there any other discussion on the village administrator position? If not, then as Darwin works up that ordinance and our committee looks at the firm that they want to hire, I think that we're moving in the right direction. I think that as Gwen has said, the sooner the better. Obviously, we want someone in place as soon as possible, but we also want the very best person that we can get.
Yes, I'm just referring to the part that sometimes when we think that we have time from an attorney aspect, sometimes things take just a little longer than what we would like them to take. And that's where I'm referring to that. I don't want our attorney to get the impression that we can wait 2, 3, 4 weeks on this. I'd like him to understand very clearly that this is something that does need to move right along.
Definitely. And that's why I think with some of the background work I can do will help move that along.
And we're okay for the subcommittee to meet 2 p.m. Thursday, then in person at the office?
Yep.
I thought we were doing a Zoom.
We are not. We changed that to an in-person meeting.
I cannot be there at 2 o'clock then on Thursday. My apologies. I thought we were doing a Zoom. School is not, I won't be there at 2 o'clock. That's why.
What time would be good for you?
On Thursday, I can do the, was it the 3 to 4 or the 4 to 5 or something like that? Those other 2 times I can do. My apologies. The Zoom I can do at 2 to 3. To be there, I cannot be there at 2.
Okay, if it's okay with the other committee members, I will change the time to 3 o'clock p.m. Because everybody did indicate that 3 o'clock was also good for them.
Mm-hmm.
So I will send out a revised invite to the 3 of you for 3 o'clock in person.
Sounds good.
Was it a Zoom initially, Darwin?
It was Zoom initially.
Okay. So this is going to be in person. I'm just jotting down right now. In person at the hall.
Yes.
Gotcha. Okay, super. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everybody. This was very helpful, and I hope in some small way I was able to help you.
Oh, it was a big way.
Yeah, we appreciate it.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a good night, everybody.
Thanks, Darwin.
Thanks.